And let's turn our attention now to the economy. The political climate of any country can promote or retard economic growth. Now, joining me now to examine the influence of political factors on economic growth in Nigeria is TVC business editor Tolulokbe Ogunjobi and a professor of economics and a former president, Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, Segun Ajibola. Good to have you join us on our special independence program. Let me start with you, Professor. Help us understand the structure of Nigeria's economy since 1960.
Well, we have a structure that we can describe as having changed tremendously. We have moved from the agrarian setting that we were in 1960 to a more diversified, more inclusive structure as of today. We have witnessed a lot of transformation between 1960 and now. 60 years down the line, we have grown tremendously in terms of quantity of economic activities as represented by the gross domestic product. We have seen several sectors in the economy contributing to our gross domestic product. We have seen improvements in per capita income. We have also noticed some transformation and use of technology to drive the economy. However, here and there, we could say, in what the radical economists often refer to as distributive injustice, that the mode of resource allocation and distribution is still badly skewed, in which case you have the rich few becoming richer and the poor majority becoming poorer, in which case we still have a very large proportion of our population living below the poverty line. We have macroeconomic variables that are still at variance with global standards, in which case our macroeconomic stability has often been under severe threat. That is why we see economic growth not translating into economic development and at times negative growth. That's why inflationary pressure is still mounting on the economy as a whole, not translating into economic development and at times negative growth. That's why inflationary pressure is still mounting on the economy as a whole. So we have often what we call inflation. We see a problem of unemployment, both open and our foreign exchange management also remains a major source of concern. That is why exchange rates, the Nigeria exchange rates to key foreign currencies, vehicle currencies, is still so high compared with even other African countries. So as of today, we can say we've moved a lot, but we've not been able to translate the opportunities we have as a country, the potentials that we have as a country, and the kind of dreams our forefathers had in 1960 into what we could call a development agenda that has touched the lives of majority of Nigerians. We've not been able to achieve that. So
Professor Ajibola, just let me put you on hold. Let me bring the conversation to our business editor, Tolu. Tolu, when you look, Prof alluded to the fact that we have moved a lot, but we have not been able to translate that into opportunities. What do you think that the major challenge is with our economy as it is today?
Value. We have refused to add value to most of the things that we do. For example, petroleum, that's one major source of revenue for government. How well have we been able to add value to petroleum since we found oil in Oluwibiri that year? So you see, a lot needs to be looked at. 60 years down the line, many will say, well, a lot has not been achieved, but a lot has been put in. You know, but look at it from 1963, where we were about 55.6 million people, to 1979, where we became 79 million people. And at 2006, we're like 140 million people. How well we're growing in population, how well were we also growing when it comes to infrastructure development? How well were we growing when it comes to expanding, you know, housing, creating jobs and all of that? How well were we doing that at that point? So I think it was a little bit of misplaced priority. We got carried away with the oil boom. We left agriculture, which is where we could have generated more jobs, attracted a lot of investment, reduced our dependency on this FX challenge that we face now. So I think there needs to be, like you said, when you're talking about the challenges, there needs to be a rethinking, refocusing, redirection of whatever it is that we are doing at the moment when it comes to the economy. Because the economy of any country is what would attract foreigners to come in and bring in their funds. But once your economy is not attractive and a lot of challenges from insecurity to macroeconomic indices not being favorable, then there is a problem. What about our stock market? What's been happening since 1960? At the time, we were the country that everybody wanted to come look at. Growing up, I was not born in 1960, but we heard stories of the granite pyramids. We heard stories of cocoa. We had all of these stories, we heard them and we read about them. But what's happening about that at the moment? All we do now is we go and we import most of these things into our country. And when we bring them in, we lose jobs. We create jobs for people outside the country. So I think one thing that is important is adding value. We need to add value. Nigeria is blessed with human and natural resources. We are yet to even harness what we have when it comes to petroleum resources. Gas is in abundance. We are yet to look that route. You know, so it's worrisome.
So you said something about how we had that population growth, but didn't provide the infrastructure to meet or develop the infrastructure to meet our population growth.
Yes.
How does that impact on economy?
Of course, that means clearly that we have more people going into poverty. Because once your population growth doesn't tally with economic growth, then there's a problem. There is a problem, because that means at every minute, people slip into poverty. People are getting poorer by the day. So it's not something that, for me, I'm not one of those people that will say, oh, it's all about Buhari administration, it's all about Jonathan administration. No, it's something that has been on for a long time. Nigeria, it's an institutional problem that needs to be addressed. We need to be focused, change our investment drive. We need to look inward. The Nigerian Export Promotion Council is there trying to promote imports. What are our farmers doing? How well would you say, as of today, I love my job, but what's going to attract me to agriculture? We need to mechanize farming. We need to make sure that people are coming out from schools and can say, I'm a farmer. How many people can really come out to say that? We're just trying to even use technology to include technology into farming. All of these things are, if we had started a long time ago, I guess it would have been better than where we are at the moment. But we didn't start so early. We're starting late. So, well, it's better late than never. But all the same, a lot needs to be done, both from the fiscal side and the monetary side of government, for us to be able to get where we're supposed to be.
Tolu, you have raised a lot of key points. But let's get back to Professor. Professor Jibola, Tolu talked about value. I would know that value begets confidence. And the economy is really about confidence, whether investor confidence or consumer confidence. Help us understand where we are in terms of that.
Yes, I think we all have a role to play as Nigerians. I think our policy propositions are somehow badly defined. We have a culture that we need to revisit. Why, for example, should an average Nigerian be looking up to Thailand rice when, in terms of value, in terms of nutrition, in terms of cost, we get something better from Abakaliki rice, from Igbima rice, from Ofada rice? So our orientation as individuals, our consumption habits are so conspicuous, are so tailored in favor of imported items. Everything that we consume, food, clothing, shelter. Why should an average Nigerian prefer imported items to those things? So that is one thing that touches every Nigerian, every person in and around there. Why should we be looking up to imported biscuits, imported juices? So if you and me can first of all readdress that kind of mentality, that kind of mindset, it will help a great deal. Then when we now look at even the planning process, we also tailor our behavioral patterns towards imported everything. We import raw materials, we import semi-finished products, we import finished products. If we look at Nigeria as a country, in and around us, all the other countries, they feed on Nigeria, not because of what they produce, but what they import and either smuggle or one way or the other pass on to Nigeria, because they know that anything sells in Nigeria, anything that is branded, imported, foreign made, sells in Nigeria. We need to shift away from that mentality. If we look at what has happened 60 years down the line, the high-tech industries, the heavy industries, Ajakuta, steel rolling mill, and others, where are they? Our refineries, where are they? In the absence of these heavy industries, then we relegate ourselves to a country that is highly import dependent on everything. Raw materials, IT industries, they all rely on imported materials. So if we can revisit segment of our national economy, we'll be able to provide raw materials. Then we talk about agriculture, which was the mainstay of the economy in 1960. There is no nation of the world that can relegate agriculture and get to the high point in its economic development. Agriculture feeds the industry. So we relegated agriculture. We are just revisiting agriculture now. So either in terms of floor, basics, as represented by agriculture, or the top level as industry and services, we are not there. So we are just in between, having to rely on other countries to import products, including food, having to rely on other countries to import plant and machinery.
So, Professor Ajibola, let me quickly jump in here, because you touched on agriculture, and that's what the federal government, that's a sector that the federal government looked at when it said it was going to diversify the economy. But a lot of people have said, let's revisit the Land Use Act. If the land doesn't belong to the federal government, maybe the federal government doesn't have any business making agricultural policies that this should be given to the states. And if we allow states take charge of agriculture, it could become a boost for the economy.
You are right. I think the Land Use Decree, which is now the Land Use Act, was passed to take care of certain peculiarities there. But I think the dynamics of the environment, the interactions among different economic agents, have actually proved that Land Use Act, as we have now, inhibits growth and development. And as a lawyer myself, I cannot see the justification for continued existence of the Land Use Act the way it was promulgated there. So if it's not total abrogation of that law, I think there is need to substantially amend key sections of that law, so that land will be easily available at the local government level, even at the village level, town level, local government level, and state level, without so much of this officialdom. That has been the problem in accessing land and anything that is defined as land for developmental purposes, including agriculture. The other commentators talk about what is happening to agri today. Subsistence in 1960, agriculture was at subsistence level, and the majority of Nigerians then rely on self-sufficiency in the way and manner they carried out their activity. That is no longer the case today. So we need to also redefine the way we practice agriculture. A lot is happening, but a lot needs to happen in the way and manner we practice agriculture.
All right, so Tulu, let's come to you. Diversification. Where are we now? We're seeing that the level of food insecurity in some states, at least was reported recently, that states like Kano, Lagos, Abuja, but Rivers are experiencing food insecurity. Yeah. And this is a time where we shut our border. This is a time where we say we're diversifying with agriculture. So where are we exactly?
Indeed, when we talk about diversification, it's one word that we've heard lately. It's been recurrent. We hear it almost every time. Everywhere you go, people talk about diversification. Yes, but one thing remains key. We need oil to also diversify, because we also need funds. We need resources to be able to diversify our economies. If we are going to reactivate, like the Ajaokuta still, reactivate our agriculture, mechanized farming and all of this has to do with funding. Now, quickly on food, there have been a lot of issues with the herdsmen clashes before now. There's been a lot of issues with land and all of that flooding in the northern area. Flooding is also notable amongst all of this. So clearly, I'm still very, it's dicey. I'm not how we're going to escape challenges with food this year. I don't see how we're, because it might even get to the high side, because already on inflation, food inflation is very, very high. So if all of these issues can be addressed and we focus squarely on real issues that has to do with diversification. Now, we had the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, which was part of the process to lead us into diversification. But don't forget, now we have the Vision 2050. We've moved on again. There's a Sterling Committee already on that to lift 1 million Nigerians out of poverty. We keep having policies, but how well do we implement all of these policies? How well are we also ready to implement the diversification agenda? Sincerely speaking, I would say, with what I've seen and records on ground, I think this administration has invested so more in agriculture. Give it to them. With the CBN coming out with the Uncle Bora scheme, a lot of schemes, I can't remember. There are lots of schemes.
There's one on fertilizer.
Fertilizer, you know, even now that the COVID-19 has come, we've seen the health part of it. We've seen a lot of investment in agriculture. But I think that Nigeria is a populated nation. We're talking about almost 200 million people. And by 2050, it is projected that we will be 400 million, times 2 of our figure. So if we don't plan now, then there will be more challenges ahead of us. So I think we need to be holistic in our approach to diversifying our economy. We need to look far away from oil, but we are not going to shut oil down. Let us stop this. Let's be realistic. We can't shut it down. That's one of the major sources of revenue for government. At the moment, where are we getting monies from? Aside from tax and a little bit from customs and all of that, it's still the sale of crude. So we cannot ignore that. Let's open up gas, which is the way to go. The minister has come out to say this is a year of gas, because gas is cheaper, but you know we have to also be very careful. Safety is very important when it comes to usage of gas. We have explosions, we see what's been happening. So, but I must tell you, being conservative enough, what the liter of fuel we run, gas will do something lesser, you know, and we will move more, and even it's cleaner energy, and that's what we need. Health issues too. So it's a whole pack. It's a whole pack. But you see, I think what we need to do is we need to start from somewhere. Our rail lines are working. We can now start using the rails. We can move agricultural produce via rail. That's also a good one too, you know. We get off the roads, the amount of buying fuel subsidy issue, because that should also be cheaper. So I think government from all spheres, we still need to meet on the round table. The fiscal side, the central bank, they should not make policies that will, you know, go against each other. They need to be in tune. They need to synergize so that Nigerians will be, at the end of the day, what we need is inclusive growth. The growth that touches the man on the street, that puts food on his table. He doesn't want to know what the figure of inflation is. He doesn't want to know how much $1 is. All he wants is food on his table.
Food.
You know?
All right, let's take the conversation to Professor, because you touched on inflation. Professor Jibola, inflation rate is now at 13.22%. We've also seen the economy contract by minus 6.10%. Clearly, we're going to head into a recession because of the coronavirus pandemic and other factors. How do we recover? What should we look at now in terms of making at least some level of recovery for the economy?
Well, some of these things, they are definitely not rocket science. when there is a variable that is under severe assault within the macroeconomic setting, all the other variables will follow. If we have negative growth rate, it means we are producing less. And when we are producing less, it will push costs. That is why we are seeing inflationary pressure going up, especially in the food area. When we have inflation, at the end of the day, it will result in unemployment. And the totality of this will bounce on our international economic relations by reflecting on the exchange rate. That is exactly what we are witnessing in Nigeria today. All the four macroeconomic variables are under severe assault. And you see, there is one thing. Let me link that, because we are talking about the welfare of an African Nigeria. Let me link that to what is happening to some of key infrastructural facilities. We talk about petroleum, we talk about electricity. You see, as of today, if per liter of petrol is 161, 162 naira, and we are saying we are not doing badly, it's a very delicate and complex issue. That rate is high because of where we are in terms of our exchange rate, running at 400 to perhaps the highest in Africa. Naira is very strong domestically. We are talking of 400, maybe a pound sterling, British pound sterling is 500 naira. What can anybody achieve with £1 on the street of London? You can't buy even a good meal. But 500 naira is big money in Nigeria. Us can feed a family of 3 or even 4. That's £1, which means there is a disconnect. The real value of naira domestically, what is attached to naira in terms of international economists will call that power. So with that, we still run into problem of substance and connect in our plan. What we then need is to strengthen the domestic government. Let's reactivate the industry with agriculture, micro, small to medium. We are going into other new sectors and segments: tourism, entertainment, hospitality, culture, also affected by COVID-19 pandemic. We were able to develop the economy, able to develop all these areas. We will gain from our potentials as a country. We will have some multiplier effect on other variables. We will boost growth. We will reduce inflation. We will generate employment. And by so doing, the strength of our economy will bank on our rate. But to do something, paradigm shift. Talk so much in this country. We have all the blueprints, we have the policies plan. How then do we translate all these initiatives into plan of action? Maybe we need another ministry in Nigeria. We call Ministry of Policy Implementation. We generate a lot of policy initiatives. And the Minister of Finance alluded to that sometimes ago, that the Nigeria Economic Summit, if Nigeria had implemented a fair proportion of all the recommendations from the Nigeria Economic Summit Group in that 5 years, we are dead as a. But what happens to all the policies? We meet on an annual basis, we make recommendations, the story ends there. Come back next year. Who is warehousing all these recommendations? Who is following up money implementation? Maybe we need a Ministry of Policy Implementation in Nigeria. So that it just be talk. The story ends from there. We are not walking the talk. So whatever we say, we need a new orientation in the area of policy implementation. That is the only way we can close that gap between our thinking process and our implementation.
All right. Professor of Economics and former President, Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, Segun Ajibola, thanks for talking to us. And business editor, TVC News, Tolu Ogunjobi, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you for having us.